Hey there, this is Clay with modernlove.life, and this is Relationship Inner Game. Now, in this episode of the Relationship Inner Game experience, I'm going to be talking about the subject of emotional unavailability, and specifically how you can identify where somebody might be on a 5-step scale identifying a spectrum of emotional unavailability. And you also might even be able to maybe even turn this tool on yourself and see if you are emotionally available or emotionally unavailable, or where you might fall on this spectrum yourself. And this originally came from some research and some thought that I was putting into some clients who were going through breakups. In the past, I've said many times that everybody who goes through a breakup is at least temporarily emotionally unavailable. Some of them will bounce back quickly, and some of them will stay emotionally unavailable for all sorts of reasons that we don't necessarily need to get into right now. But I wanted to identify the process that somebody might go through on the journey of going from emotionally unavailable towards starting to open up emotionally again. We're going to be using the example of a breakup a lot. However, I want you to also keep in mind that this is not necessarily limited solely to this field of breakups, okay? You might be able to use this tool to explain maybe someone's behavior who hasn't recently gone through a breakup, maybe even your own behavior if you have had a hard time getting into a relationship or sustaining a relationship or something along those lines, okay? So let's go ahead and keep that in mind as we go through this process. Now, there are 5 stages that somebody goes through in the process of going from the most extreme level of emotional unavailability to being emotionally available, okay? And let's go ahead and start with the first and most extreme stage. This one is called the meltdown stage, and although you may not necessarily find yourself in this stage, when you are going through a very traumatic experience such as a breakup, it's very common to find yourself there, at least in the very beginning stages, okay? So you're emotionally in this meltdown kind of mindset where you're panicking, you're in what we often call damage control mode, you're trying to repair a situation that maybe used to be there, you're maybe trying to piece the relationship back together, you're trying to get the dating experience, the dating dynamic back to where it used to be, you're trying to undo something that you see as an obstacle to where you want to go. So, I mean, obviously, if you're going through a breakup, you might be in this damage control mode frame of mind. Again, we're calling this here the meltdown stage. You might be in this sort of highly panicked state of mind initially, and what happens is your world has been turned upside down, right? You were in a relationship, and then suddenly that relationship was taken away from you, so you're naturally kind of a little bit panicked because your identity may have been attached to that relationship. You may have saw yourself as somebody who is in a relationship, as somebody who has a boyfriend or a girlfriend, or somebody who is married, or whatever it might be. And then when that suddenly vanishes from beneath your feet, you may suddenly be in a little bit of a panic, understandably. Okay, so that is the first stage. However, this is not completely limited to breakups, like I said before. This can happen in any sort of dating experience. So for example, maybe you like somebody, maybe you're romantically interested in somebody, you haven't gone through a breakup anytime recently, you're single, and you like somebody, and maybe you've gone on a couple dates or something like that. And then suddenly you find out that that person is starting to date somebody else. Maybe they're in a relationship with somebody else, and you might start to panic. So this would be an example when you end up in the meltdown stage when you're not necessarily going through a breakup, okay? And so as you start to move through this stage, you'll notice that the main thing that you need to do, the main piece of awareness you need to bring to the table here is to bring yourself into the present moment. And as you start to bring yourself into the present moment, you'll start to let go of maybe what once was and start to gain further understanding and further grasp of what your current experience is. So as you do this, you'll start to accept that maybe the breakup is something that happened, that maybe the person you like has started to date somebody else, that maybe somebody asked for some space, or something didn't go the way that you wanted to. You'll start to accept that this is something that actually happened, and not accept as in like you're just giving up or rolling over and dying or something like that, but you have to accept that what is real if you're going to make any sort of meaningful and useful action on that moving forward. Okay, you can't just live in denial about the whole thing. You can't just resist and push it away and pretend that it's not happening or anything like that. And I often talk about acceptance, people say, well, am I just supposed to accept that there are, I don't know, starving children in Africa or something like that? And the answer is yes, you are supposed to accept that. You can do something about it, but you have to first accept that it is a reality of our current society, that there are starving children in Africa or other parts of the world. Once you are able to accept that this is a truth, you are more empowered to actually do something meaningful about it, as opposed to saying, oh no, it's not right, this shouldn't be happening or anything like that. Of course it shouldn't be happening, of course it's not right, but until you can actually accept that it is the truth, you are not in an empowered place to do anything about it, okay? So that is the first thing that you need to understand about the meltdown stage, is that in order to get from the meltdown stage to the second stage, you're going to have to first accept that what has happened has indeed happened. So that is the first stage. It's the meltdown stage. Now, assuming you're able to actually accept that what is real, you can start to move into the second stage of emotional availability, okay? This would also be the second stage of overcoming a heartbreak, so to speak. And this second stage is what we call overinvestment. Now, at this stage, you're out of that initial super panic that you might have experienced during the initial breakup or the initial news that didn't go your way or something like that. But you're still very, very overinvested and very, very focused on what the other person is doing. So maybe if you're dating somebody, you're very focused on what does it mean when they post this thing on Facebook? What does it mean when they're posing in this photo with this other person? What does it mean when they're going to lunch with that coworker? What does it mean when they say that they have a new friend who happens to be of the opposite sex? What does it mean when they send this emoji and they're texting me? What does it mean when they like this post on a certain social media site but not this one? What does it mean when they say that they're going to call me but then they don't? Or what does it mean when they call me out of the blue and I'm not there to answer the phone and they don't leave a message and then they don't answer when I call them back? What do all of these things mean? And when you're in this frame of mind, you are definitely over-invested in that person and what they're doing. Okay, you're kind of watching them hawkishly, micro-analyzing every move that they make or don't make and trying to deduce some sort of meaning out of it. This is the over-investment stage, and it is still fairly emotionally unavailable if you're in this stage, okay? If you're in this stage, you are emotionally unavailable. If you notice somebody else who's in this stage, that person is emotionally unavailable, okay? And again, this is not merely limited to breakups. This is not merely limited to your ex. This is obviously applicable to any sort of dating or relationship scenario. So for example, if you're dating somebody and you're micro-analyzing their every move, then yes, you're in the overinvestment stage. If they're over-analyzing your every move, then yes, they're in the overinvestment stage themselves too. And the thing to realize here is that you are overinvested in someone else's behavior. You're overinvested in someone's opinion of you. You're overinvested in the meaning that their actions or inactions have and what those meanings mean about you, okay? And what you should instead learn to do is to invest more in your own experience of yourself, your own life, and what actually brings joy to you rather than overinvest in someone else. That's not to say that you shouldn't be invested in other people. Obviously, you should be invested in the people that you care about, right? You should care about your partner. You should care about your family. You should care about your friends, all of these things. But you shouldn't do it at the exclusion of your own well-being and your own opinion of yourself. You should always be more invested in your own opinion of yourself and what you want for yourself more than you are invested in someone else's opinion of you or what somebody else wants for you. Otherwise, you will always end up playing a supporting role in someone else's life, okay? And you probably don't want that because that means that you are at the complete whim of whatever that person wants. They're essentially driving the car wherever they want to go, and you're just a helpless passenger along for the ride. And that's all well and good if that person is well-intentioned and wants the same things that you want, but what if they don't? What if they don't want a relationship? What if they just want friends with benefits? What if they just want to hook up? What if they just want to keep an open relationship and date 3 or 4 different people? I don't know. If that's not what you want, then you should be more invested in yourself, more invested in your own life, and more invested in what you want for yourself rather than being more invested in someone else, more invested in their opinion of you, and more invested in what they want for you, okay? So the important decision here is to be invested in your own experience of life and to understand that there are these limiting beliefs that you have in your mind that are controlling the meaning that you're drawing from the other person's actions or inactions, okay? So for example, beneath the surface of all of this, you might say, oh, well, if he doesn't text me, then that means something about me. That means I'm unattractive, that means I'm unlovable, that means my ex was right to leave me, or whatever, right? Or if she dates somebody else, that means that maybe I'm undesirable, maybe I'm a beta male, whatever that means, right? Maybe I'm not an alpha male, maybe I'm not attractive, maybe that the girl that rejected me in high school for the prom was right and I really am a loser, whatever, right? There are these limiting beliefs that you have that you are applying to what these other people do or don't do, and drawing meaning from that because you're more invested in them and their opinion of you than you are in your own opinion of yourself. And this is causing you to be emotionally unavailable, right? So the solution then is to shift the investment from them and what they're doing or not doing to yourself and what is important to you, okay? And if you can do that, you'll move from the second stage of emotional unavailability towards the third stage. And this is the middle stage. There's 5 stages. This is the middle stage. And this stage is called the roller coaster. At this middle stage, what's happening is, maybe if you went through a breakup or something along those lines, you're probably starting to live your life again right now. During meltdown, you're probably barely able to function in your day-to-day life. During the overinvestment stage, probably a large chunk of your mind power is devoted to analyzing your ex, analyzing your breakup, analyzing your relationship, all of this stuff. But when you get to this middle stage, you're able to actually get through the day. You're able to function in your day-to-day life if you're going through a breakup, but you're still very, very focused on external events, okay? So for example, if somebody who's going out there into the world and doing things, you might end up dating somebody. Somebody might end up asking you out. You might end up asking someone else out. Or something else completely outside the world of dating or relationships might happen to you. Maybe you get a raise. Maybe you don't get a raise. Maybe you have an argument with somebody in your family. Maybe things are getting better with somebody in your family. Maybe good things are happening with your health or fitness. Maybe bad things are happening with your health or fitness. And what's going to happen is you're going to start to attach emotionally to these things that are happening outside of you. And sure, it's normal to have an emotional response to things that are happening in your life. It's normal to feel good if somebody wants to go out on a date with you. It's normal to feel good if you ask somebody out and they say yes. It's normal to feel kind of lousy if you ask somebody out and they say, I'm not really interested. It's normal for you to have an emotional response to the outside world. I'm not going to tell you that. But if you're in this roller coaster stage, your highs are extra high and your lows are extra low because you're attaching a lot of your value to things that are happening outside of the world, okay? Or outside of your inner world, so to speak. And what's important here is to notice that you're attaching your value, you're attaching your well-being to things that are essentially out of your control, right? So for example, if I was attracted to an attractive single woman, I might go up and I might ask her out. Now, whether or not she says yes is somewhat under my control. I mean, there are good ways to ask a woman out, and there are bad ways and less effective ways to ask a woman out. But ultimately, it's her choice if she says yes or if she says no. And whether she says yes or no could be entirely unrelated to me and my approach, right? She might already be in a relationship with somebody else. She might already be married to somebody else. She might not be open to dating somebody because she's just not in that place in her life right now. She might just be going through a breakup and she just doesn't want to date anybody. She might be visiting from out of town, and if we were to get into a relationship, it would be a long-distance relationship, and she is not open to that for any number of reasons, right? There are all kinds of things that might cause her to say no that have absolutely nothing to do with my approach, the words I use, the routines, the openers, stuff that you might think could be very influential. And sure, those things can be influential. You know, there's a very big difference between asking somebody out in a very collected, very composed sort of way versus a desperate and needy sort of way. And that absolutely does have an impact. But if you're at this middle stage, if you're at the roller coaster stage, you will realize that if she says yes or no determines my self-worth, determines your self-worth, right? And so it's important to realize that there's something else driving the boat here. And as you start to move out of this stage, you'll start to detach from you'll start to detach your value from other people's responses and the world's responses to you, and you'll start to move that towards your own values. So for example, maybe I'm attracted to a single woman, and I go up and I ask her out. And whether or not she says yes or no is irrelevant because I had the courage to step out of my comfort zone and to live life in accordance with my values, which is to say, hey, I'm attracted to this person, I'm a single person, and I would like to go out on a date with this woman. And so whether or not she says no is irrelevant because I can feel good about myself because I acted congruently with my own values. And if you can do this, then you'll start to move out of the roller coaster stage into the fourth stage. And this fourth stage is actually very tricky. This fourth stage of emotional availability is we're almost there, right? And this fourth stage is called the validation trap. Now, here you're, of course, past a lot of the shock of maybe whatever happened. Maybe a breakup, maybe somebody pulling away, maybe somebody dating somebody new that you didn't want them to date or whatever. And you're definitely functioning in the world again. You're not really listening to those limiting beliefs. You're not attaching your value to the outside world. You're attaching it more to your own values. But you're still caught in what we call the validation trap. The validation trap is the fourth stage of becoming emotionally available. And in the validation trap, you might still start to be getting good results in the world around you. You might start to be getting good results in relationships, in dating, in maybe connecting with somebody, in reconciling with somebody, or anything else. But at this validation trap, you're still using that something outside of you to mean that you're either a worthwhile person or a non-worthwhile person. Okay, so here it's more kind of deeper than just, hey, am I valuable or not, but more sort of deeper and more identity driven. Okay, so oftentimes a lot of people will end up stuck here for their entire lives, right? Even people like pickup artists will end up getting stuck here for their entire lives. They might be very skillful at meeting, dating, attracting women and all of that, but a lot of their identity is based on attracting a certain type of woman, right? A certain type of, very attractive woman. Maybe someone that he might consider a perfect 10 or something like that, right? And as long as you're trying to get a 10, let's just go with this here, to be attracted to you, to sleep with you or something like that, then you're letting that person control your value as a man. And as long as you're viewing her as a 10 and her sleeping with you is going to validate you, make you a man, make you a pickup artist, make you one of the top guys out there or something like that, then you still don't have any power to actually be emotionally available to connect with her. And the same goes for, maybe the classic sort of woman's scenario where it's maybe trying to get married or something like that. It's a little bit cliche, but oftentimes women want to get married to, the right guy, the one, or something like that. And as long as you're focused on the outcome, as long as you're focused on the goal of maybe getting married or something, then you're essentially emotionally unavailable because you're not really connecting with the guy as an individual, just like how the would-be pickup artist isn't really connecting with the woman as an individual. They're connecting with these people as a means to an end to get validation, as a means to an end to get the marriage, or as a means to an end to get the seduction, so they can have some sort of validation. And that's all fine if you just want to have like meaningless sex or something like that. But if you really want to have a high quality emotional connection with somebody, a relationship with somebody, then you're going to have to do better than the validation trap. And you're going to have to start to look past that. And you're going to have to start to let go of using other people as a means to an end. And you're going to have to start to just genuinely not trying to label yourself, not trying to identify as a certain identity, such as a pickup artist, or not a average frustrated chump, or as marriage material, or as not a spinster cat lady, or something like that. And as soon as you can do this, you're actually able to drop this pressure that you're putting on yourself, and instead actually be able to connect with somebody in a genuine and authentic way. And so when you're able to do this, you're able to move to the fifth and final stage of emotional availability called emotional freedom. And when you're in emotional freedom, you're able to freely connect with anybody because you're not taking their response to you or whatever happens on the outside world as some sort of meaning about you or your value as a person or anything like that. Instead, you're just able to take it for what it is. You asked somebody out, they said no, hey, whatever. They said yes, hey, that's great, that's awesome. But it's not going to identify you as, a loser because they rejected you, or a winner because they said yes to you. And so when you're able to do this, you're able to be emotionally free because you're not attached to outcome. And when you're not attached to outcome, because you're not worried about your own identity or your own value or your own limiting beliefs or anything like that, you're actually able to connect with people on a deep and meaningful level. And this is true in pretty much every relationship scenario, okay? Whether you're trying to get over a broken heart, whether you're dating and single, whether you're a man, whether you're a woman, whether you're trying to repair a broken relationship and reconcile, or anything else, okay? This is important and this is absolutely essential, okay? And also I want to add in that you may have heard me talk about other 5 stages, about, 5 stages that you go through in getting back together, 5 stages that your ex goes through in getting back together, 5 stages for this or that or anything like that. And I want to let you know that this continuum is not excluding these other 5 stages. This is just telling a story about emotional availability, okay? Whereas the other ones might be telling a story about somebody else's emotional availability, or they might be telling a story about somebody's ability to connect. But this is simply a story about your emotional availability. So if you can identify where you might be on this spectrum, you can say, okay, this is what I need to work on, and this might explain maybe why I'm having a hard time creating a emotionally available relationship with somebody else, is because maybe I'm not emotionally available. Or if you're having a hard time connecting with somebody, that could be a different story entirely, but instead you want to look at this story as a story of how available you are to have an emotional connection. Or if you're applying this to somebody else, how available somebody else is to have an emotional connection. So I hope this has helped you out, and whether you're going through a breakup, whether you're dating, whether you're trying to reconcile with somebody, whether you're trying to work out some difficulties in a relationship, I hope this has given you a good tool that you can use to start to improve your availability on an emotional level so that you can have better emotional connections, okay? With that being said, if you want to learn more about any of this stuff and how it might apply more specifically to your situation, please go down below and sign up over on our website, relationshipinnergame.com. I'll ask you a short, brief questions, just like 30 seconds or so, just to get an idea about where you're at and where you want to go. And once I know where you're at and where you want to go, I'll send you some tips, advice, and strategies to help you get there. With that being said, let's go ahead and turn to some of the questions that students who are enrolled in our courses, such as the X Solution program, such as Loving Boldly, and such as Dating Bravely, are asking this week. Okay, again, these are the questions that people who are enrolled in our courses are asking this week. If you'd like to ask a question during a relationship in a game experience, you must be enrolled in our courses. So with that being said, let's go talk to some of our students and answer some of their questions. Our next question is from Reyes. Reyes writes in and says, what is the best approach to expressing vulnerability to our exes when they are in a rebound relationship? It is counterintuitive, but I noticed when I interact with my ex in the presence of his rebound, ignoring her and focusing on him, it seems to somehow set him at ease to interact and banter, even though his instinctive reaction whenever we first meet, as he is with her, is to avoid me. Feeling into it, therefore, the tone of our interaction and the dynamic that we share seem to be determined by how I choose to bring myself to the interaction than whether or not he is with someone else. Ignoring his rebound relationship and approaching him and each interaction as though it didn't exist, even when she is doing her best to appear as a couple with him, with her behaviors, seems to work best. We fall into enjoyable interactions even in her presence, and this opens him up to be more high quality and deeper connections thereafter when the rebound is not present. As you suggested, I asked if he would be considerate to my feelings, and he responded with, quote, "You know what she is like," end quote. However, he has since refrained from public displays of affection on his part when I'm around. Her, of course not. Being vulnerable and showing I am impacted by him has brought us closer. He seems to trust me more somehow, even though his rebound is still there and everywhere, really. I've also noticed it matters to him if I express I want him, i.e., if I can reach out, he responds and holds my hand. I have been walking on eggshells because I thought that he gets to, quote-unquote, decide where we go. Previously, it was my coldness to him which led to our separation. Okay, Reyes. So overall, I think that you actually have a pretty good approach at expressing vulnerability with your ex while he is in a rebound relationship right now, from how you've described it. You do say that you are basically focusing on the quality of the connection between you and him. You're not worrying so much about what's going on with her, and it seems to be having a good impact on your ability to connect with him and on his ability to connect with you. And I do think that that is very, very good. Of course, she is not really stopping the PDAs the way that he is because, to her, he is her boyfriend. And so, likely she wants to have that kind of stuff in her life. And whereas he's kind of holding himself back a little bit. So as you can see, he's kind of being put in a point of decision, right? He's kind of approaching that crisis point that we talk about in the 5 stages of getting back together, that your ex goes through when getting back together. And as he starts to get towards this crisis point, he's going to have to make a decision between being together with her or being together with you. And because you're putting this pressure on by focusing on the quality of the connection between you and him, by asking that he, refrain from the public displays of affection when he's, when you're present with them and all of that stuff, he's actually following through on that because he likes the quality of the connection that he has with you, and because he's, being respectful of the connection that the two of you have. And as you're continuing to bring yourself to this interaction in a way that is causing the two of you to connect very well, it's likely that he's probably going to choose to be with you as this crisis point comes to a head, okay? So again, you're going to have to focus on having high quality interactions that bring the two of you closer together. It does sound like you're absolutely having this kind of effect on him. The two of you are connecting well. The two of you are doing things like holding hands when the two of you are together and all of that. And again, he's sort of approaching this point of decision where he's going to have to make a choice between you or the other woman, okay? And as long as you continue to make the interactions between you and him feel good, he's likely going to choose to be with you, especially when you consider that this other woman is probably going to become jealous, going to try to control him, going to try to limit his contact with you, and all of that stuff. Okay, so interactions between him and her are likely going to start to feel bad, and interactions between you and him are likely going to start to feel better and better. And that is a simple recipe when you're sandwiched between those two choices of choosing the one that feels good over the one that feels bad. So overall, I think that you're actually doing quite well when it comes to your connection with him, and I would go ahead and keep that up as you continue down this path into the crisis point, okay? So Reyes, I hope that helps you out, and please keep us updated on how things go moving forward. Okay, the next question is from Dean. Dean writes in and says, "Thank you for responding to my message on the MQA the other week. You were totally right in saying that my ex will not be in the same place she was when she split up with me, such as after a year of hell in which she was very depressed and stressed. She is now, well, it seems, in a happy place in her life, and things are coming good for her. Over the last few months, I've initiated contact on several occasions, and she responded positively or neutrally. When I tried to escalate the conversation to other means, such as phone, she would pull back and say that we should stop having continuous contact because it is too hard to stay in contact. I was being empathetic, vulnerable, and using intimate communication skills to try to open her up. She would repeat the same thing in text, and I have now respected her decision for no contact to give her space. We have now not been in contact for 3 weeks. Personally, I believe I was doing very well, and then I came across her profile on an online dating website. I feel generally sick seeing it. It was a realization that maybe she is open to moving on 4 months since the breakup. So my questions are, 1, is it disrespectful to reach out to her again in the future when she asks for less or no contact? Or after, say, a month or 2 months, is it okay to initiate contact again or to test the waters? The reason I ask is later this month there are 2 key dates which include 1 year since her brother's suicide and also her birthday. I feel inhumane not reaching out to her on both of these days. Okay, let's go ahead and get these questions one at a time. So the first one, I think that it would be okay to go ahead and reach out to her on these dates. Now, up here previously you said that you were having conversation with her and she would pull back and say that the two of you shouldn't have continuous contact because it was too hard for her to stay in contact, and that she would say this over and over and over again. And what this probably means is that there is a concern that she has, or something that's in the back of her mind that is worrying her. And until you can address that, whatever it is, maybe she's afraid that the two of you are going to get back together and that it's going to be the same dynamic that the two of you had before, or maybe she is afraid that nothing's going to change, or maybe, I don't know, whatever it might be, right? There's some part of her that is not being heard. And as long as that part is not being heard, she's going to continue to say this over and over and over again, that we shouldn't be in contact anymore, that we shouldn't have so much contact, all of that stuff, right? So it's important to recognize that. And when you do get back in contact with her, I would definitely make sure that you try to address this by paying attention to how she brings herself to the interactions, by paying attention to the times and moments when she seems to hold herself back, and by getting curious about that and asking her questions about that, such as saying something like, hey, when I brought up the topic of blah, 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 I couldn't help but notice that it seemed that you started to pull away. Is everything okay? Or something along those lines, right? And what's going to happen is you'll start to realize that there might be something that's going on with her, and once you can start to address that, she'll know that whatever is on her mind, and then she can start to relax, because right now she's probably afraid because she knows that there's something on her mind, and she doesn't think that you know what's on her mind, which means that she feels that she is the only one who has the ability or the awareness of what's happening, and the only one who has the ability to stop it. And if she is aware that you are aware, then that's going to put her at ease, and she's going to be able to relax a little bit more around you, and she's going to feel a whole lot more comfortable interacting with you, knowing that maybe, for example, you're not trying to force her to get back together with you, that you're just focused on the connection, you don't have a hidden agenda, or whatever it might be, right? And so if you can vocalize that to her, if you can find out what that is and vocalize that to her, then that's going to help her to lower her guard and to start to feel more comfortable interacting with you again. It's also important to know that when somebody says something like, hey, I don't think that we should be in contact so much, that's coming from an emotional context in that moment. That person is feeling something. That person is experiencing something that is happening in that moment for them on an emotional level. And just because they're feeling that in that moment on an emotional level doesn't mean that they're always going to feel that way. So their emotions might change from day to day. Their emotions might shift from moment to moment. And if their emotions change and shift, their opinion and their stance on this might also change and shift too. So if somebody is in an emotional state of maybe frustration or fear that maybe you're not seeing them or hearing them where they're at, that might cause them to say something like, hey, maybe we shouldn't be in contact as often. Whereas if they feel seen and heard, if they know that you understand where they're coming from, they might suddenly shift and they might start to say things like, yeah, it's okay if we talk all the time or whatever, right? And so as the context shifts, it's okay to not be so caught up on the content of what they say, okay? What I would do is I would go ahead and test the waters and see if she's open to being in contact with you again. If she is, then I would go ahead and see what that apprehension might be that's causing her to want to pull away or distance herself, and start to unwrap that, kind of like we just talked about a moment ago. Your second question here is, should I see that she is online dating again as a sign that she wants to move on and therefore move on myself? I don't think that necessarily means anything. There are a lot of reasons why somebody might put up an online dating profile, okay? First of all, if it's a free website, that means they're often less committed. So when people are on free websites such as Plenty of Fish or something like that, they're not really committed to online dating. But if somebody's on a paid website such as Match.com or eHarmony or something like that, that person has skin in the game and they are ready to start dating, okay? And second of all, if you were on a paid site and you saw her profile, then chances are you also had a profile as well too, which begs the question of why you were logged in the first place. Were you trying to move on? I don't know. That's totally fine if you were, but it just begs the question of what's going on there. Also, I want to point out that there are a lot of reasons that people might use online dating websites for more than just being serious about dating. Maybe she was just hanging out with some friends and they're like, oh, you need to move on. Here, let's put up an online dating profile. And they just, over a bottle of wine or something, just put something up online. And maybe she just did it because she was just trying to go with the flow or something like that. Sometimes people will put up online dating profiles, believe it or not, just for the self-esteem of knowing that other people are looking at them, if other people are interested in meeting up with them, if other people are attracted to them. They actually may have no interest whatsoever in actually meeting up with these people. They might just be interested in getting their ego stroked a little bit, if you know what I mean. It also could be an old profile that she just kind of left up from maybe before you were even together, and she just never got around to taking it down because it just never occurred to her to log in and take the profile down. I don't know. There could be a lot of things going on. What I would do is I would go ahead and not jump to worst case scenario situations, but instead just say, okay, she has an online dating profile. I don't know what that means. I don't know why that's there. The real question is, do you want to connect with her on an emotional level? If you do, connect with her on an emotional level. Don't try to read between the lines and jump to conclusions about something that may or may not mean anything. Okay? And the third question you have is, I generally believe that my girlfriend still loves me and misses me, but believe that she is protecting herself from any further pain by putting her guard up. If she isn't allowing me to showcase my change, is writing a letter an appropriate means to outline everything that I have learnt from the breakup and how much that I've grown? I know actions speak louder than words, but maybe this will plant a seed in her to at least open us to communicating with me and testing the waters herself. Okay, so overall, I wouldn't think that writing a letter would be the best way to go about doing this. I think that how you bring yourself to the interaction, such as how I've described in the past, such as, hey, I noticed that when I brought up the topic of da-da-da-da-da, I noticed that you seemed to pull away. Is everything okay? Just having that present moment awareness to say something like that, whereas maybe you might not have had that awareness to say something like that before, that can really stand head and shoulders and really demonstrate that you actually have an awareness of where she's at, an empathetic concern about what her feelings or what her situation might be and all of that. Again, I don't know the specifics of what your relationship was like before the breakup, but oftentimes just bringing yourself to situations in a way where you're doing something like that can be enough to demonstrate change. Now, if she's just completely walling you out entirely and there's like zero contact and you're initiating contact with her and you're getting nothing back or something like that, then maybe something like writing a letter could be a way of breaking through. But overall, how you bring yourself to the interaction is much more important than simply just putting it down into words or simply trying to do something, doing this or doing that. For example, I laid out the example a moment ago of saying like, hey, I noticed when I brought up the topic of da-da-da-da-da, you seem to pull away. I'm not telling you that so you can like write that one down and put it in your back pocket and just kind of robotically say that when something comes up. I'm telling you that because there is a way of being that's causing somebody to actually say that. There's a way of being that's causing somebody to actually be curious about her experience. There's a way of being that's causing somebody to actually notice that maybe she's pulling away or shutting down or something like that. And rather than simply just memorizing a bunch of lines and scripts, I want you to take on the way of being that's going to cause you to actually feel into the situation and to realize that this kind of dynamic is happening and to take a curiosity in this dynamic and to actually just have a dialogue with her about what her experience might be and what she might be concerned about. Because, sure, maybe lines and tips and scripts and things like that, they might help you get to the next step, but eventually you're going to have to go off script. You're going to have to know in the moment what the right thing is to do, right? You're not going to be able to plan for every contingency. You're not going to be able to have everything memorized. You're not going to be able to know what to say at every single moment unless you have the right way of being, unless you genuinely are concerned about her well-being. If you're genuinely concerned about her well-being, then you're going to show that in how you behave, even if you don't have the right scripts, even if you don't have the right lines, even if you don't have the right routines memorized. If you just genuinely care about her well-being, that is going to come across in how you bring yourself to the interactions, even when things go off script, even when things go sideways, even when you get thrown a curveball, okay? And that is the best way to bring yourself to these interactions when it comes to your ex, when it comes to dating somebody else, when it comes to anything. So I would really focus on that way of being rather than trying to memorize lines or scripts or anything like that, because that is going to come across much better than any sort of artificial, manufactured, inauthentic way of being. And it's also going to come across across a whole lot more than any sort of written letter. So I hope this helps you out, Dean, and please keep us updated on how things go moving forward from here. Okay, so those have been our questions for this week. Once again, if you'd like some more customized help dealing with whatever it is you're dealing with in love and relationships, please head on over to our website, relationshipinnergame.com. Go ahead and sign up there. Again, it will take about 30 seconds just to fill out a brief, painless survey, just letting me know where you're at and where you want to go, and I'll send you some tips, advice, and strategies to help you get there. But with that being said, I hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Relationship Inner Game Experience. If you've liked it, please go ahead and give us a thumbs up if you're watching us on YouTube. Go ahead and subscribe to the channel, and please leave a comment down below letting me know what you think. If you're listening to us on iTunes, please go ahead and subscribe to us on iTunes and leave a ideally positive 5-star review letting us know what you think about this podcast, and letting other people know what you think about this podcast so that they can find this podcast more easily. Anyway, I'll talk to you next week, and I hope this has helped you improve your relationship inner game.